I began the process of creating Edward Elric's Automail by saran wrapping my mannequin. For my version, I decided to extend the automail into my right chest, so I duct taped all of that part, as you can see here, the top of the shoulder, the sides, and then onto the back, of course. Being sure to duct tape as flat as possible so it fits as well as it can, because this is what the pattern will be made out of. Next, I take a light colored Sharpie or permanent marker and make the outline of the designs that I would need. Once I'm happy with what I've come up with, then I use my darker black marker to make the more permanent lines. Once I'm happy with what I have, I cut the duct tape and saran wrap off of my mannequin. Next up, I have to saran wrap my actual arm and duct tape it as well. My mannequin does not have an arm, so I have to do this on myself. You could also do the chest piece on yourself. I thought it would just be a bit easier for me to not have to do the entire thing. My arm wrap isn't perfect, but it will definitely do. I then attach my arm piece as best as possible to the chest piece so that I can start making the marks that I need to for how the automail will look. Continuing the process the same way, I use a lighter marker, try to get all the lines down that I would need to know, and then I use a darker marker to finalize them. Once I am happy with everything I have, I will be removing it from the mannequin and cutting it out very carefully. You can see me doing it here with paper in hand. The paper is what I'll be transferring the duct tape pattern onto to make sure that I keep everything in order and as easy for myself to understand as possible once it's all cut into smaller pieces. You will see little by little this duct tape pattern will become a puzzle, and I get to determine how it will go together. Some of the pieces will extend anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 an inch. That's because it will be laid upon each other with the foam and the Worbla later on. This may be a little difficult to understand with me explaining, so I'm hoping you watching the process helps, and as it comes together, you'll understand a bit more. All I'm doing here is cutting out carefully, tracing them onto the paper as you can see, labeling everything as best as possible, and continuing on to each and every piece involved in this automail arm. While you watch me cut and pattern, I will say that this arm took me basically 3 8-hour days, equating to about 24 hours. Maybe a little more, but not much more than that. If you are familiar with Full Metal Alchemist and Edward Elric, you'll know that his automail doesn't go entirely on his chest, but that is how I designed mine and how I wanted it to come out and look. That is my creative decision, and I hope however you may do it, you also take artistic liberties, because why not? As I get finished with all of these pattern pieces onto the paper, I will be tracing it onto a pretty thin EVA foam. I would refer to it mostly as craft foam, because that's the thickness that it is when you get it at Michael's or Joann's or really any craft store. You can see the white roll of the craft foam here. This is the one from Michael's. I believe it was $15 for the entire roll. This was the end of this roll because I had used it for another project. It definitely came with a lot and I would recommend it. The roll of foam is specifically from the Art Minds collection, if it is something that you are interested in. They seem to carry a number of different thicknesses now, which is very helpful. But this is the thinnest. I chose the thinnest thickness of their EVA foam because I wanted this Automail to fit as close as possible. I already knew that I'd be putting Worbla over it, as you'll see next. So I wanted a thin, or as thin as possible, EVA foam. The Worbla I only put on one side. That is for two reasons. One that I just explained. I want it to be as thin and as close to the body as possible. And I knew that only doing one layer of Worbla with one layer of EVA foam would do that without an issue, but still have really good structure and not be flimsy. The second reason is because Worbla is expensive. I really love the thermoplastic, and I think especially for projects like this, it is a great thing to use, but it is an expensive product, so, you know, I'm very not so generous with it. And luckily for this project, I didn't need to double layer anything. Here you can see me making the layers, the one layer, and then trying to curve the edges as much as possible so they're not pointy and upwards. In case you are not familiar with what Worbla is, it is a thermoplastic, so it is pretty stiff when you first get it. They usually come in a roll, and you can heat it with a heat gun, and then it gets very flimsy and very moldable and pliable. And as you can see here, I'm doing each piece one by one, but soon you'll see me shape it onto my mannequin chest and on my arm. And you can see how with the heat it will flex, but as soon as it cools, it keeps its structure. I am covering every single piece of the arm and the chest in the Worbla, so that's this whole entire process. I did choose to use the black Worbla. It is the preferred one for me currently when it comes to a project like this. It stays pretty flat. I know that at the end I have a few air bubbles, and that's something I have to work on myself when it comes to this product, but trial and error and practice. And soon no air bubbles, hopefully. Here I am getting ready to work on the chest piece. There is a really large curve because of my breasts, and it's not going to be the easiest to do. You will be seeing that. But there's two pieces. This is the top piece that goes from the top of my chest to my shoulder, and here is the bottom piece that will go from the center of my chest to my undercup. Now you'll begin to see me try and shape it as best as possible to my mannequin on my actual cup size. It wasn't working as easily as I'd like, so you see me reheat, attach separately off the mannequin, and then go back to try and shape it as best as possible. I got it to a point where I didn't hate it and just tried to move on as best as possible. Here I'm attaching the other pieces that go from the back to my side to around my chest to around my shoulder. The piece is kind of long, but that's just how I made the pattern, and you can see me heating it all up together. I do add small scrap pieces of Worbla, as you see there, to make sure that nothing tears apart or tries to come apart in any way. And here I'm attaching layer on layer from the design that I created, going to the mannequin whenever I deem needed. As you can see, heating it trying to keep it in place as best as possible with some masking tape, and then attaching the cup to the bottom part of the armor. It kind of probably sounds like I'm rambling about it. I'm glad that you can see a lot of the process, and hopefully you understand much better than me trying to explain it. Now, like I was doing before, I'm taking small scrap pieces of Worbla, anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to an inch wide, putting it on every single seam, just trying to make sure that everything stays together, stays heated together, that none of the Worbla or craft foam try to tear apart from each other, and just making sure that it is a complete and solid structure for my costume and not having to worry about anything falling apart. This is a huge benefit of thermoplastic. You can use any small scraps and they can also be attached to each other again. You can do anything with them. You can crumple them into little balls. You can make them into different shapes. Here, what I'm doing, I feel like is pretty simple, but it is going to help this project a lot. And after wearing this for a convention, having it in a random bag and traveling with it for hours, I have to say I think adding these small scrap pieces definitely helped. Along with the inside, I did add a small trim to the outside. This is decorative for myself. It is the way I wanted it to look, and I enjoyed the way it turned out. Thermoplastic does get very hot when heated. You can see it kind of burning the foam underneath itself. I don't have any gloves on because I haven't been able to find ones that I'm comfortable with using and being able to do small details like this. I hope to find some, but if you can wear gloves, and I would definitely recommend it because my fingers were hurting after this. This is also just the chest piece. As you can see, I do end up doing a lot of the same process for the rest of the arm, from the shoulder to the forearm and the elbow piece. It may get a little tedious here, but I just wanted you to see the entire process and how it all worked out for me. Here is me starting the shoulder piece with the craft foam. Like I said, it's all going to be about the same thing. I just extend the top so that layers upon itself. This, what you just saw, was actually the bottom structure piece that I did not add craft foam to. I found it to be easier if I didn't, and then just added the craft foam pieces on top. You'll be seeing that process in a little bit, and hopefully it'll make a little more sense. I did do the same thing for the gauntlet. The bottom of the gauntlet is only Worbla, and then on top is the piece with the foam and the Worbla. It's honestly just an aesthetic reason why I did that, just wanting it closer to the skin, more quote-unquote realistic. But if you would like it more secured being with EVA foam, that's absolutely understandable. After creating all these pieces with the foam and the Worbla, you will see me go back to the chest piece because the shoulder piece does need to line up with the chest piece in a particular way, and I just need to make sure that the fit ends up well, as you can see me doing here. With the top 3 pieces, I attach them with some tape for a little bit just to make sure that they cool in the same position and don't move. Now that I've cut out the base pieces for the arm, you will see me heat up the forearm piece and actually lay it against my arm as best as possible so it can dry in its exact shape, as you see me do here, taping. I waited for it to cool as much as possible, just trying to get a snug fit. I cut it to make sure that it fits correctly and I can move my wrist and my elbow as comfortably as possible. Now you see me about to do the same process for the top of my forearm, which is what the shoulder piece will attach to the pieces that I just had cooling. You'll see in a little bit. It's a little difficult to explain at these points, but here we go. Now you can see it all lining up, and I tried to mark it as best as possible. I did use real screws, washers, and bolts for this. I think it went best with the look and also made it really easy for me to put on and off the pieces and flexibility in my shoulder, my elbow, and even my wrist. So all of the pieces that are attached are actually attached with screws, nuts, bolts, and all of those things. I feel like this is the most tedious point, the hand. You see me duct tape the hand, try and do as many marks as possible to know exactly what I'll have to do. The same as you saw me do before, just a little more in detail. Hands have a lot of details and fits need to be very specific and particular, and it makes it, I feel, more difficult than the rest of it. I traced my pattern just like before, every single little piece labeling as much as possible to make sure that I don't misplace anything, forget anything, or not know where something goes later on. The hand itself, the entire hand, is only made by Worbla. Even the layered pieces are just layered Worbla pieces. I did not want to put any craft foam and have it any bulkier than it needed to be. Using only Worbla did work out for me, also because the fingertips and all finger pieces were glued to the glove itself, and you will see me make the structure of the hand able to slide on. Wasn't the easiest, but it's what worked out the best for myself. Just like every other Worbla piece, it needed to be heated and cooled in the shape of my hand. Each and every small piece needed to be in the shape of wherever it was going to be. So whether it be the joints of my fingers, my fingertips, the top of my hand, every part. And that's what you see me doing here. These small finger pieces were the worst part of this project. It is absolutely my least favorite part of this project. 1 by 1, 2 to 3 to a hand. I waited as long as possible to have to do this. It was the very last thing that I tried to do. I dislike it very much. A few years ago, I bought a brown belt from Home Depot that I knew I would be using this for. That is the large belt you see me cutting there. I'm so glad I finally get to use it. It's the reason I bought it. I also bought that thin brown belt from a Goodwill about a couple of months ago, and I think it worked out really and handy for this project. I contemplated how to paint this. I live in an apartment building, and it was pretty cold out, so I really didn't want to spray paint. So I went with Mod Podge, and I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to work, but it worked out absolutely fabulously. I did 3 coats of Mod Podge for each and every piece, and I think it did a great job covering the Worbla and making it as smooth as it possibly could. I did not sand any of the Worbla before and or after. I just figured hopefully the Mod Podge will do as best as possible for me to be able to add a fabulous silver paint, and I think it did a great job. for the paint, I did 2 layers of the Michaels Liquitex Basics brand. That is the first 2 layers that I did because I wasn't sure how much of the good silver paint that I had. I think it did a pretty good job for a $5 paint. I would recommend if you're going a cheaper route. I think it did a pretty good job, and 2 layers was good for me to be able to put on the next paint. So for the other 2 layers, I did use the Plaid FX Silver, the metal silver paint that they have. I think it gave a wonderful finish and exactly the look I was going for. I feel like with the size of the bottle, it is a bit more of an expensive option, but I think that the colors that they have are absolutely beautiful and very difficult to find. But I wasn't sure about the coverage, but I think it did a really great job. I think I could have used it without using the other paint originally, and I just wasn't sure. But I don't regret using the other one. I think them going together one upon the other really helped, and with the Mod Podge, everything, I mean, you can see the silver for yourself. I think it turned out great. Pretty cool for something that wasn't spray painted or airbrushed. I did mention how everything was held together by screws and bolts, but there were still closures that were needed. Here, you can see me adding a piece of craft foam with some Velcro on top, which is what I'm adding. This is the industrial Velcro. It is very handy and it works very well. I decided to use that for the gauntlet, and then I attached the other piece in the inside of the Worbla, as you can see. It didn't break, nothing happened to it, and it was a very snug fit. Next up was the sleeve. I did add Velcro to one side of the sleeve, sewing it, and then I added the industrial Velcro to the inside, gluing it as you saw, and it definitely worked out. It did not budge at all. The breastplate did fit really well, but sometimes it would move when I lifted my arm, so I added some webbing. As you can see, it had a metal slider on each side. I only had that there so that the webbing that was actually going around my entire underbust would be able to attach to something. I wanted it to be adjustable, so I added a garter clip, which is what clips onto the pieces that I'm gluing on. It seems kind of weird, but it helped keep it really well. I tried to explain my process as best as possible. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I hope watching helped, and if you happen to use some of the stuff that I said to make your own, I'd love to see it. Feel free to tag me in any post. And here's just a video of the arm and my mobility and, well, just how it looks. Don't mind my weird face. I did wear it to AnimeNYC for this year, 2021. I had a great time. The arm I had absolutely no issue with, and I think it turned out pretty well. I hope you enjoyed watching. I know it was a long video. I hope it was informative, and thank you. Feel free to do the other things people do on YouTube. I don't know, like, subscribe, all that. Whatever you want to do. Have a great time, whatever time it is, where you are on this random day. Bye.